Martin Lipton joins us now to continue the Spurs chat. Martin, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, John is a Spurs fan and is feeling pretty optimistic about things, and I think with good reason, right?
I think so, yeah. So, look, it would be ridiculous to assume that because they bought reasonably well this summer and they got Conte, that means they're going to win the title. But I do think the minimum aim and expectation actually will be to be best of the rest behind City and Liverpool. And in what will be a bizarre season for all the reasons we've discussed, or you discussed just now, let's see what happens. But they've got goals in them, there's no doubt about that. They've probably got more goals in them now. They don't have to rely on Kane to play every game, which is for the better. They appear to be recruiting well and strengthening the obvious limitations in the squad. So they're in a better place now than they were this time last year, that's for certain.
I think a lot of the faith is based around the improvement in the players who are already there that he decided to put faith in, but also the signings in the Christmas window last year hit the ground running really quickly, which suggests that Conte knows what he's doing, that he can get the best out of players who have been underperforming. He can also integrate players really quickly, and then this is a turnover of the squad and it's his team really quickly. He is still at the peak of his powers, it feels like. Yeah,
absolutely. Look, it needed change, and for a number of reasons the change was delayed. A lot of it was due to the building costs of the new stadium. They needed to get the finances in place, and then as they were looking to utilise the extra income that the stadium would give them, we had the pandemic. So it took them 18 months after it was answered. They still hadn't opened, rather. They still had made next to nothing from the stadium, which was designed to earn them, well, £6 million from every home game. Now that funding, weekly funding or bi-weekly funding, is on tap. Therefore, it allowed Conte to make the demands. But importantly, Levy answered and said yes. And that was the difference.
Yeah, there's no point in having a stadium if the attraction there is a mediocre team with no Harry Kane and Son goes and so obviously they had to back him. But the fact that he's been so successful, I'm not sure everybody expected him to be this successful this quickly, and getting into the Champions League is like super bonus territory.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you looked at it from the overall quality of the squad, you'd have said Spurs were 5th or 6th last season. I think that Manchester United underperformed appallingly, and Arsenal, in the final analysis, couldn't cope with the pressure of expectations. So they sneaked through the back door. But they did that because they won so many matches at the end of the season. I mean, they didn't, get handed the points. They actually had to go out and win them, and they did. And a lot of that was because the Bentancur and Kulusevski came in and gave an extra dynamic to the team in January. The longer Conte was there, the more he was able to work with the players in training to get them to understand. He once says that a lot of players, to be automatons, to know instinctively what to do, to work under his system. And if they complain, it's, well, I'm the boss, and look at what I've done. And you can't look at his track record at all the clubs he's been at and not think, well, actually, maybe he's got a point. As others have pointed out, he won the league with Victor Moses at right back. That says it all, really, at Chelsea. He turned a Chelsea team that had been a disaster the previous campaign and finished 10th for all those reasons, with falling out Mourinho and everything else, and made them champions. And of course, if he hadn't done that, Spurs would have been champions that year, because they were second by some distance in that season. And everybody at Tottenham wants to win something. There's no doubt about that. They believe this bloke can do it. They recognise that he's the man in charge, and it is working. Now, whether it will continue to work, whether players want to be scolded and moulded by Conte for the long term is less clear. But I think the general view of most of them, this is our chance. We have a real opportunity, and we actually see from top to bottom, this club knows what it wants to do now.
When Matt Doherty comes back from injury, is he going to have the same level of love from Antonio Conte as he did before his injury?
If he plays like he did, yes. I mean, we've had this conversation before, and I've said that I always felt that it just seemed a club too big for Doherty. I thought he was struggling to be the player he'd been at Wolves, or indeed was in an Ireland shirt. And then suddenly last season, for a couple of months, he was absolutely outstanding. He's certainly a far better attacking player than Emerson Royal, and that was one of the things Spurs missed actually at the end of the season, was his attacking thrust. but they bought Spence to give them that, and he's younger. On Doherty's plus side, of course, he is versatile. He can play left wing back as well, less effectively than right wing back, but he can play there. I think that Doherty was certainly, if he's fit and right, I think he would probably start the season as the first choice right back or right wing back. That doesn't mean he'll stay there. And it all depends, and that presupposes they're going to sell someone, which will be, I suspect, Emerson Royal. But were they to receive a bid for Doherty and not for Royal, then they might decide to cash in there just because they have Spence now added to the squad.
Can I ask then about Troy Parrott? He's gone out on loan once again to Preston this time. What's the feeling within the club about his future prospects? Is next summer going to be the summer that he's going to be in the first team plans, or is this going to just be another step on the way out the exit door at Tottenham?
I think he needs to do well at Preston, but they're still very confident about him. They're both him and Dane Scarlett, who's also gone out on loan. He went to Portsmouth yesterday. They think that the development path is the right one. That they look at what happened with Kane, and he needed 3 or 4 loans out to become the player that was good enough to fight for a place in the squad at Spurs. And it's a similar view with these two, that they are continuing the progress, they're doing well, but they need to be more robust, more physical. They need to grow into men before they can compete with men, which is not an unreasonable feeling, particularly in that position. As a central striker in the Premier League, you do have to have the physical ability to cope with what goes on. And then it's a mentality question. Do you have what it takes to drive yourself and also continually reinvent yourself? Because the best strikers don't stand still. If they stand still, they get swallowed. Kane constantly evolves, does things differently. All of the top players do. They do what they do brilliantly, but they add something every game. So you've got to think again, which allows you to go back to what you're good at initially. Get to have that facility and ability to adapt, change, and drive defenders to distraction.
The squad is still pretty big. It's kind of a mishmash of various managers up to Conte, and now his added impetus of an extra 8 players essentially since he's arrived in. So do you expect many players to, well, it's a multi-pronged question. Will they be able to get rid of the players they want to, I suppose is the best way of phrasing it?
I think they will. They're certainly having discussions already about plenty. The one you've got to get rid of is Ndombele, because he's been a disaster to join the club. My problem with him, if I was buying him, was hang on, he only lasts 60 minutes. Why am I buying this player? I'm playing full whack for someone who plays only 2/3 of a game if he plays at all. But then Lo Celso's got to go. He's never going to make it under Conte. But there appears to be conversations with Italy and Spanish clubs. Likewise, there's a few others. I think we've got, Harry Winks has served his time at Spurs. They might get 20 million from someone for him. He's still a decent player, and he can play for a mid to lower tier Premier League club and look very good, I think. And a few others as well. They've got to get it down to 25. They've got to have a maximum of 8 overseas players under UEFA and Premier League rules. So Brian Hill will go out back on loan. I don't think he'll ever be a Spurs player, but there you go. And a few others. It's going to make...
Just having a bit of trouble with that line there. I think the squad size is about 30 at the moment, so they're pretty close to it. But I had forgotten completely about the nationality requirements and the makeup of those rules, which ultimately is probably going to dictate who survives and who doesn't. Sorry, yeah, we've got you back there now, Martin.
Birmingham, you see, it's the middle of nowhere. Yeah, I was saying, I think they'll lose 5 or 6, mainly the overseas players, because you only allow 17, or 8 rather, overseas players in a 25-man squad. So you can see the obvious places that they were prune. The ones who were left behind didn't go on the South Korea tour by choice rather than by necessity. They've got no chance, have they? I mean, they've been basically told, find a club, because otherwise you're not going to play for anyone.
Yeah, do they care about how much they get for those players at this stage, or is it actually better just not to have annoyed people around the building stinking the joint out?
Well, they'll get rid of them in some form, whether it's giving them away on loan, get deals. They'll try and get money in, and if it comes to the last minute, they may end up paying them off because... if they don't play them, don't give them a squad number, then they can claim a free transfer under FIFA rules anyhow, can't they, in January? So you end up getting rid of them that way. But there's no point in leaving bad smells, stinking the place out. You're right. You just have to make that hard decision and say, these are no longer part of the club. We'll get you out any way we can.
Is this a new era where actually the investment on the pitch is going to reflect the gleaming stadium of it?
It'll be the first year when it's moving in that direction. As I said, the difference from the past is now they've got a full revenue from the stadium, and they've not just got the match day revenue from the football, which is around 150 million, maybe a bit more a season, 6 million a game. You've also got this summer they've had Guns N' Roses and Lady Gaga. They have got the NFL deal, which is 2 matches this year. They've got various rugby union. I think the New Zealand All Blacks are playing against the Barbars, I think, in November at Tottenham. The income stream is in. That will therefore mean more sponsorship, which will mean more income there. The Premier League income they get will be maybe 150 million. If they have a decent Champions League run, that's 80 million. It's adding up, getting towards £500 million. Even with Spurs running the tightest ship of the big six in terms of wages to revenue, 60% of £500 million is 300 million in wages. That's a 45% upturn on where they were last season. You can see the direction of travel. And sadly, the teams with the biggest wage bill tend to be the most successful teams. It's just a fact. They get the better players.
Can I posit a scenario there when the current manager has a reputation for leaving and for bringing a club to success and then falling out for whatever reason? But actually, if you go back over it, there hasn't really been an opportunity for him to stay somewhere where he had control, he had investment, and he had a situation which was as long and forward-thinking as the one Spurs is at the moment. So all of the situations he's been in have been where he's wrestled control from another power in the league through astute signings, force of personality, and then the club hierarchy were like, well, we're selling your best players, or it was Roman Abramovich. In this scenario, is there potentially a world where he actually is there for the long haul and is the manager for a long period of time, getting the investment that he wants, largely having control over transfers?
I think if you were to post that hypothesis about any other manager, you say, yeah, there's a chance he'll stay. And then you think, oh, hang on, it's Conte. He doesn't stay anywhere. He gets itchy feet wherever he goes. He can't stop himself. So if you get 3 years out of him, that's a long stint. Just because it doesn't mean that he can't evolve and change. He is no longer the 45-year-old Antonio Conte. It may be that he wants to put his roots down and stay somewhere. But I suspect that would be in Italy rather than in England, just because he's an Italian and that's where he feels more comfortable. So this is just a job, a lucratively paid one, and one where he wants to be successful because he knows if he can bring trophies to Tottenham, particularly the biggest of trophies, then that would make him one of the greatest managers there's ever been, just because of, well, it's Tottenham, as it were. But he does that, I'm sure, for an even more lucrative pay elsewhere, because that's what he does. And that's not a criticism, it's just the nature of the man is that I don't think he'll ever feel in a place that he doesn't want to leave, just because of what he is. He's always looking for the next opportunity.
In previous iterations, the Spurs job was always a good job, but it's because of the financial scenario that you've outlined there, it's becoming a great job. Like, everything there is set up for success. I don't know what the academy system is like. And, we definitely heard about the Manchester City academy system being sensational for the last decade, and now it's beginning to bear fruit. All those players who come through on loan for other clubs, they sell for 10 to 15 million, and suddenly they're able to buy the world's best players, paid for by the world's best young players, being sold. I don't know if Spurs are set up in a similar way, but it's definitely one of the best jobs in world football, given, again, the economic situation that you've outlined.
Yeah, it's an increasingly appealing job, and if they can become a consistent Champions League side, even more so, there is the opportunity to certainly supplant Arsenal and potentially supplant Chelsea, because Chelsea, under a non-Abramovich ownership, is going to be a different model. It just is. and Spurs, they've got nearly 50% more capacity in the ground than Chelsea. Chelsea are going to spend 5 years or so rebuilding piece by piece, so their income levels go down. There's a capital cost of £1 billion plus on that new stadium. There's an opportunity to become the preeminent side in London in the short term. And London is one of the most attractive places for football. We know that England is, because of the money that's in the Premier League. It is a real chance for Tottenham to become a major player. And it's interesting, the Super League issue 18 months ago, Spurs didn't necessarily want to be part of it, but they were terrified of being left out because they thought that would consign them to the ranks of also ran, so they went with it. And there isn't any question now that they'd be asked if another thing were to come up because of what's happened. Things evolve in football. They sometimes take a while, and sometimes they happen very quickly. And at Tottenham, you think things are happening fairly quickly. It's taken a while, but question, a long time, and they've been sort of peering through the glass ceiling and not being able to break through it. Well, now you think they're actually cracking it open with a sledgehammer.
Do you have any idea what the starting team is going to look like at the moment?
If I had to pick, it would be Luis, Romero, Dyer, Longley, Doherty if fit, and Perisic if fit as the wing backs. 2 from 3, and I suspect Bentancur and Bissouma, but it may just, the opening game might be Højbjerg just because he's been at the club longer. And then he'll start Kane, Son, Kulusevski, but things may alter.
Richarlison's just a good quality sub to have?
Well, he can't play the first game of the season anyhow because he's suspended because of that Everton throwing the pyro back at the crowd. And I think there'll be games when they play 2 up front, or there'll be games and he'll play left and Son will go right. He'll play lots of football. The 4 of them will play lots of football, but none of them will start every game. There'll be a constant rotation. It
is pretty exciting. There's just one last little question there. What are Bayern Munich doing talking about Harry Kane? It's like considered very bad form, but was it just a random stupid answer to a silly question, or was it like planting a seed in Harry Kane's mind? Come on, we love you. Come on, Harry, why don't you come and conquer Germany?
I think a bit of everything, really. They needed to make a signal that they weren't devastated by losing Lewandowski, that they were looking for somebody else, that they had the appeal to go out and get another uber striker. And they also recognise that Spurs, if they ever do sell Kane, will not want to sell him to a Premier League rival. And that if he goes to Bayern Munich, he's pretty much guaranteed to win Bundesliga every year and potentially go close in the Champions League. At the same time, there's no way that Spurs are going to sell Harry Kane, and I'm pretty sure that Spurs are doing everything they can, believing that this season will be the one to persuade him he doesn't need to go anywhere, that he can spend the rest of his career until he goes to the MLS to finish it off at Tottenham, breaking all the records. I mean, you've got to remember that Kane wants to overtake first Jimmy Greaves at Spurs, and he's 18 or so behind, so that happens this season. And then Alan Shearer as the Premier League top scorer. He needs 3 or 4 seasons to do that, to get to 261. And if Spurs won't sell him to a Premier League club, then he's got to do it at Spurs. But he won't want to stay if he's got no chance of winning something. Last summer, it wasn't that he wanted to leave Tottenham as much as he felt he couldn't stay there anymore. That has changed. He now wants to stay. Look at his reactions. Look at the way he's talking. There's no issue of him wanting to go anywhere, is there?
No, it's definitely not. The chatter has definitely died down. Martin, it's good to be excited pre-season. Great to have you with us again. Thanks a million. Cheers.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.